Pardon the interruption, but I'm Pablo Torre, and PTI turns 23 today, Tony, so congratulations.
Tony Kornaczer, thank you. Apparently it means more to me than it does to Wilbon. Yeah, so what can I say?
Do you think he knew?
So 23
Did he know?
No, I didn't know and he didn't know, no. But 23 years, I don't know that you ever watched us, but if you had watched us at the beginning, you would have been a teenager, because that's much more than half your life, right?
Yes, I would have been 16 years old. Yeah. I was a very different,
50 years
but
in the last
visually
minute.
similar person. Yeah.
Such a dinosaur. What am I doing here? Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. Wilbon worked one day and already needs a day off, so I'm joined by our great friend, the host of the podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out, Mr. Pablo Torre. That's weak. And we begin today with the Baltimore Ravens falling behind 10-0 last night at Tampa Bay, then scoring the next 34 points and eventually beating the Buccaneers 41-31. Derrick Henry rushed 15 times for 169 yards. That's 11 yards of pop. Lamar Jackson rushed for 52 yards. That's more than anyone on Tampa Bay, and passed for 281 yards. 5 of Jackson's 17 completions were for touchdowns. So, Pablo, do you see the Ravens on the same level as the Kansas City Chiefs?
I do not. And I want to begin by acknowledging that this is probably the best version of Lamar Jackson that we've seen, Tony. You know, it's not easy to be actually concretely better than you were last year when you were an MVP for the second time. Looks like you'll get a third. The issue to me is that regular season MVP awards is not my concern for the Baltimore Ravens. You know, maybe it's unfair for me to do this, but I'm thinking about the postseason. And I know Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, with a great defense, which they have right now, and pretty much no receivers, can get to the Super Bowl, at which point Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes stuff. What I don't know about the Ravens remains how Lamar Jackson's going to be in the postseason. And so to me, he hasn't answered, and he cannot possibly answer the instrumental question that causes me to say that it is the Chiefs way up top, and then a steep drop-off, and then, yes, the Ravens are among the others.
There is a very interesting role reversal with these two teams. The Baltimore Ravens, and you cannot say this enough, they lost already to Kansas City in the opening game. They lost that game.
Right.
But after losing to Kansas City and then inexplicably losing to the Raiders, they've won 5 in a row, in which they are averaging 35 points per game in those 5. No team in the league has scored more points than Baltimore. And yet, what is their Achilles heel? Their Achilles heel is defense. The role reversal is so obvious. For many, many years, the Baltimore Ravens were known for defense, and if they had some offense, that was a bonus. For many, many years with Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City was known for offense, and nobody even focused on the defense. And now they're killers on defense. They're terrific. In Spags, we trust, and all of that stuff. So it's interesting. By the records, obviously they are not on the same level because Kansas City is 6-0 and Baltimore is 5-2. But over the last 5 weeks, Baltimore's been great. Derrick Henry leads the league in rushing, 125 a pop. And Lamar Jackson is the #1 rated passer, and his ratio between touchdowns, interceptions, 15-2, the plus 13 is the best in the league. But
crazy.
I'm with you on the playoffs. Mahomes is 4-0 against Lamar Jackson. Even though the most mind-blowing statistic of all last night was Lamar Jackson's 23-1 against NFC teams. But you got to beat AFC teams to get to an NFC team.
Tony, it's so funny. The great statistics for Lamar Jackson, just to recap, are his record against NFC teams and his record in prime-time regular season games, none of which address the issue. And by the way, your point about Derrick Henry, just to acknowledge this, right? I'm watching this game last night. Derrick Henry, when you see him or you imagine him, it's like, oh, right, he's putting people into the ground. He was like a golden retriever running through a field last night. It was blocking, it was free, it was easy. And this regular season for the Ravens looks easy after it started off a little rough. I just can't do it.
I had one statistic wrong.
That they're better than the Chiefs.
I had one statistic wrong. Mahomes is 4-1. 4-1 against Lamar Jackson and 1-0 in the playoffs. But the essential point is the same. You've got to get into the NFC by going through the AFC. You have to do it.
Yes. Tony, I want to also talk about the other game last night, the late game, because that's where we saw the Cardinals edge the Chargers. James Conner had 152 yards from scrimmage. He helped set up a game-winning field goal as time expired. And Justin Herbert, meanwhile, threw for 349 yards, but the Chargers did not score a touchdown in a 17-15 loss. So the Cardinals are 3-4, the Chargers are 3-3. And so have either of these teams convinced you, Tony, that they can be a factor?
Have they convinced me? No, absolutely not. I don't know why anyone looks at these teams and thinks that either of them are any good. They don't score any points. Okay, when Jim Harbaugh took over the Chargers, everybody said, he's got Justin Herbert. He's a quarterback guy. He's going to make Justin Herbert as great as we believe Justin Herbert should be. Has that happened yet? No, that has not happened. No touchdowns last night. No offensive touchdowns in the second half since week 1. This was just their 6th game. They score 17.7 points a game. That puts them even with the Raiders and the Titans, and those teams stink. So I haven't seen the effect on Justin Herbert yet. In terms of Arizona, I don't know why anybody would like them. Is Kyler Murray great fun to watch? Spectacular to watch. But where is the payoff in this? They had 41 points against the Rams. Other than that, they average 18 points, and their defense is terrible. I think they're 24th in points allowed and 27th in yards allowed. So you have to tell me why either of these teams is going to make any noise at all, because I don't believe it.
So I'll get to that point. I just want to acknowledge, though, the stat that you led with, which is, to me, mind-blowing. It's that the Chargers, in the second half of games since week 1, haven't scored a touchdown. That is an indictment, if anything, on the head coach. You go into the locker room at halftime, you strategize, and you come out, and you're completely impotent week after week after week. I think Harbaugh's a good coach. I think this has not been a good season for him. But the reason why I say they are in the mix, right? And again, if the conversation is happening in the living room, right? Those where the contenders are. Yeah, they're in the narthex somewhere, right? They're in the antechamber. They're in the mud room, right? They're trying to stomp their feet and get in. The reason why it's still an audible sound is because the NFL, Tony, if you haven't noticed, is largely mediocre right now. There's a lot of slop in there. And so when you look at the standings and you say, okay, 3-4, 3-3, they are very much still in it. They are very flawed. But if you're to tell me Justin Herbert suddenly ends up being the guy who actually lives up to the promise of actually scoring a touchdown because he throws for 350 yards and hits receivers in the hands and they drop it, I might be able to buy that dream. Might.
I don't know why they were on prime time, and I don't know that they are candidates for being on prime time again, either of them. The NBA season kicks off tonight with 2 games. The Knicks are at Boston, where the Celtics will raise their championship banner. The Timberwolves are at the Lakers, where Bronny James is expected to play alongside his father. Pablo, which of the 4 teams playing tonight provides the most interesting storyline leading into this season?
So if I was just dropped on Earth from the moon, I would say the fact that LeBron James is playing with his son for J.J. Redick as a first-time head coach feels like the lead story. That's the one above the fold. But because I live here on this planet and I am numb largely to such manufactured storylines, I'm thinking to myself, it's kind of remarkable that for 6 years in a row, the NBA champions have not made it to the finals the year after. And so that's why I'm going to say the Boston Celtics, to me, are actively interesting. They are clearly, to me, the best team in the league, and they just have the recent history working against them. Are they good enough to break the rule of parity and unpredictability that the NBA has, whether people realize it or not, soaked themselves in over the last half dozen years?
Yeah, each of the 4 teams, to me, has a unique and interesting story. I'll start with the Celtics, because they're going for a repeat, and as great a franchise as they have been, they have not won back-to-back in over 50 years. Plus, they got a couple of unhappy campers on that team, I believe, because of Olympic or non-Olympic experiences. And I'm talking about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I understand the Bronny and LeBron thing. I understand the Redick thing because he's never blown a whistle in his life. And everybody's going to look to that, you know, and so that's interesting. But to me, Pablo, Minnesota and New York are inextricably tied in answering this question. They made the biggest trade of the offseason. And when that trade was made, everybody just said this is a slam dunk for the Knicks. So why did Minnesota make that trade? What did they get back that persuaded them that this was, in fact, a good trade for them? And I think you have to look at that. Will Anthony Edwards somehow make up for the loss of Karl Anthony Towns? Will Anthony Edwards and Randall, will they make up for it? Will DiVincenzo score 16 to 18 a game so that Anthony Edwards gets some pressure removed from him. To me, we're going to know at the end of the year who won that trade. We're going to know.
Yeah.
We'll compare this year's numbers to last year's numbers. Everyone thinks Minnesota lost that trade. I'm not so certain. I'm not.
I'm
Let's
not
take
so
a break.
sure either. Yeah, no, I'm not.
Coming up, is Aaron Rodgers right that the Jets need to stop listening to the media? We're going to ask Jeff Saturday.
We'll also ask him how he'd feel about sending Tua back out onto the field.
Pardon the interruption.
It's time to dig into the NFL trenches with our great friend, ESPN NFL analyst Jeff Saturday. Jeff, we're going to begin with an Aaron Rodgers question. A reporter asked Aaron Rodgers how the Jets can keep belief within the locker room, and Rodgers said, and I'm quoting here, "Stop listening to you guys, number one," unquote. Then he added, of course, that he might have to play better. You played, and you're now in the media. How much impact, honestly, does the media have on the belief of a team?
Well, if I were Aaron, I'd probably flip it at least, right? At least I should play better. And then if you want to talk about the media, let's go from there. But that being said, you hear it. It's not necessarily tuning out. You hear people say all the time, you got to tune out the noise. You can't hear it. You don't pay attention to it. And that's all a lie. We all hear it. We all got family members. Even if you're trying to stay away from the media, you're going to hear something that's being said. It's how you handle it. How do you process it? And I would say, from Aaron's perspective, he had made the same kind of comment a couple weeks before after they won a game and saying, hey, don't let things go to your head. I think it goes to both, right? You're never as good as the media is saying as you're never as bad as the media says. So keep it somewhere balanced. Don't let that drive everything from a team perspective. But playing better, I would say, is the most important, and that goes for the entire squad, not just Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, Jeff, the latest on Tua right now. He's on track to start following this concussion. He's going to start on Sunday is what it's looking like. I want to give you the quote that Tua said. I love this game, and I love it to the death of me, end quote. Now, you have coached, of course, yourself. How would you feel about putting Tua back out there?
Well, he's going to play because he's passed. He's passed all the neurologists, all the doctors. They've all, so from a coaching perspective, there's not, even if you didn't necessarily support it or love it, he's going to play because that's their job, and your job is to coach the ones that are there. I think from a personal perspective, I understand what Tua is saying, right? It would be disingenuous for me to get on here and act like we didn't all put ourselves at significant risk. And I understand people have seen Tua, right, the fencing posture and all the things that have happened to it that are super scary. And we all watch it, and it bothers us. But from an offensive lineman and one who, as far as the CBA has gone, has fought for player health and safety, those O linemen, D linemen, linebackers, and running backs, we face that at a significant higher level than most quarterbacks. And so I see guys and what that happens to them post-game, and it can be tough. But Tua uses the odds, right? You heard him say, right after that quote, he talked about the odds. As NFL football players, Pablo, we're told our whole life how many odds we beat. We beat the 1 in 5 million to get to here, and 1 to whatever million to be one of the best 32 quarterbacks to play the game. All of those odds that you've heard, you've always been on the upper end of those. And so to think that at the end of this, I could be the one guy who beats what we think could potentially happen, I probably will be that guy as well. So I know that's not a great answer. That's the reality. The reality is players think of it in those terms, and it's hard. It's hard to watch, and I think it makes us feel a certain way as people to watch him go play. But the reality is it's his decision, and this is something he wants to do, and we'll continue to watch.
But speaking of what, you players get told, I want to bring up what Bill Belichick recently said about what Patriots coach Gerard Mayo said about his defense, which is that they're soft. Now, does calling a player soft actually motivate you guys?
I think it can motivate. I am not a huge fan of the soft comment, right? And I use it very sparingly. You have to have a significant amount of courage to play our game. I don't care what position you play. I don't care, how many plays you play. I use this example, right? And this is the Jaden Daniels, who's a rookie and for the Washington Commanders. And I think it was week 1 or 2, and maybe it may have against the Bengals. I can't remember. But he has a free blitzer off the edge, and he throws a touchdown to Terry McLaurin down the right sideline. And he took one literally right in the chest, right? There's a level of courage that you have to have, knowing that somebody's going to physically assault your body every time you snap the helmet on and those pads on. And so to say someone is soft, you can say, hey, we're not playing a type of football with the physical toughness I'm looking for. Soft is offensive in my mind. I think Mayo's trying to use it to motivate your guys, to your point. And I'm sure he has said that. But most players, I'm not sure if it's nearly as motivating as it is just like, hey, man, like, just tell me I'm a bad player. I'd much rather hear that than soft. But it's not the indictment, I think. I don't think it's going to bother guys in the locker room like they can't play for the guy. It's just, probably tongue-in-cheek the way he said it, and it pisses guys off, and hopefully he gets what he wants out of it, but they'll have that kind of conversation as a team and head coach. This is a great appearance. I've learned a lot of things today from you, Jeff. I particularly like that quote where you said a coach's job is to coach the ones who are there. I particularly like that. We'll get you out of here on this. 49ers lost Brandon Ayuk for the season. Given the rash of injuries to their playmakers, if you were on the offensive line of the 49ers, who are now 3-4, would you be feeling optimistic or pessimistic about where things stand? Optimistic and cautiously optimistic, but optimistic. And here, it's crazy how we can do this, but players can frame in best case scenarios, right? And I guess it's because you've played your whole life. You got to manifest, some type of encouragement. But you'll tell yourself, hey, McCaffrey's going to come back soon. Or Deebo Samuel is going to come back soon. We're going to have Kittle's going to step up, or Mason's going to be like, whatever you have to tell yourself to motivate yourself, to put yourself in that optimistic mindset. That's what guys are going to do. And here's the scary part for the 49ers. The reality is they're one game out in their division. If you win your division, you get a home playoff game, man. The Seahawks are 4-3, you're 3-4. So if you're dissuaded at this point, you got significant issues. You better be optimistic, or you're in the wrong line or wrong profession, because you got to have that mindset, knowing in 2 weeks we could be leading our division, literally leading ours. So we just got to go take care of our business, and I'm sure that's what Shanahan's telling those guys. That's a really great appearance. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, fellas. Great being with you, Jeff. Let's take one last break. Still to come, Joel Embiid needs more time before his season begins. Who saw that coming? Really?
Well, Tony, enjoy this one, though. Mike Tyson may have another big-named opponent if he makes it through, Jake Paul. So.
Happy time, people. Happy 30th birthday, Corbin Burns. The former Cy Young winner in Milwaukee spent this season with the Baltimore Orioles after coming over in a trade. Burns went 15-9 with a 2.92 ERA in 32 starts. Pitched 194 innings, had 181 strikeouts. What's interesting now is that Burns, a four-time All-Star, he's a free agent. He's represented by Scott Boras, who had a rough offseason last year, settling late and light on Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell. Burns is 60-36 over his career with a 3.19 ERA. Started out as a reliever in Milwaukee before becoming a full-time starter in 2021, the year he won the Cy, with a Major League best 2.43 ERA. Quickly, Pablo, where's Burns going?
Orioles have a new rich guy owner, David Rubenstein. It feels like job number one, keep Corbin Burns.
That's a good idea. Happy anniversary, Albert Pujols. On this day 13 years ago, the Cardinal star went 5 for 6 with 4 runs scored, 6 RBI, and 3 home runs. With his third homer in the 16-7 rout of Texas, Pujols joined Babe Ruth and Reggie Jackson as the only players to hit 3 homers in a World Series game. Pablo Sandoval joined them the next year. The Cardinals won that World Series, and a few weeks later, Pujols signed a 10-year deal with the Angels, where his career more or less disappeared. Pujols had hit at least 30 homers in each of his first 11 years in St. Louis. With the Angels, he only did it 3 times in 10 seasons. His batting average dropped dramatically, as did his RBI. It was stunning. He went from Babe Ruth to Dr. Ruth.
It was the Bermuda Triangle, Tony. The Angels were a place you got lost. And by the way, Mike Trout, if you're out there, just know I haven't forgotten about you just yet.
Happy trails, Jamison Williams. The Lions wide receiver reportedly faces a 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substances policy. The 23-year-old Williams is the 5-1 team's second leading receiver and is quoted as saying that he has, quote, no choice but to take it on the chin, unquote. Last season, Williams was suspended 4 games for violating the league's gambling policy.
You know a guy is good, Tony, when he can be suspended twice for steroids and gambling and still be pretty secure in his job.
Very quick to the big finish. Joel Embiid will miss the first week of the season. Paul George out for opening night. Cause for concern?
Of course it is. Of course it always is. The Browns are signing Bailey Zappi off the Chiefs practice squad. Does that make sense?
They need quarterbacks. Their quarterback's out. Chiefs cornerback Jalen Watson will undergo surgery for a broken fibula and tibia. Woo, big loss?
Yeah, he's a starter, but he might be back in time for the postseason. So we're okay. All NHL teams are in action tonight, Tony. Which game intrigues you the most?
I believe the Rangers are playing the Canadiens, the original 6 teams, and the Rangers, I believe, are undefeated. That's the one. Last one. Lennox Lewis told TMZ he'd consider a rematch against Mike Tyson if Tyson beats Jake Paul. Are you intrigued by that?
I am morbidly intrigued if we can get Tony Kornheiser and his pen out to cover the fight like old times. Get in the time machine.
We're out of time.
We're all doing it.
Out of time. Try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
And I'm Pablo Torre. This is my show. But for now, here's the Capitals and the Flyers.